Welcome to episode 160 of the GT on 5G. It's the latest inside scoop on everything 5G. We cover 6 topics in about 20 minutes, and it's brought to you by More Insights and Strategy. I'm Will Townsend, and joining me again this week is fellow analyst Anshel for our second podcast of the week. So my first topic, I want to talk about Vodafone UK and how they're going to lean into Open RAN for their Huawei rip and replace program. So it's no mystery that Vodafone in general is embracing Open RAN in many different ways. And so this news comes on the heels of that strategy. And what they're starting to do is there are over 2,500 sites in Wales and other parts of England that they're beginning to deploy Open RAN to remove Huawei gear. And this doesn't surprise me. Number one, Vodafone in Europe has been the mobile network operator that has embraced Open RAN the most aggressively. And this is something that I've pointed to in the past too. Open RAN's flexibility and its capex is significantly lower than traditional RAN infrastructure from the traditional providers there. So I think it's a great strategy for them to do that. Now, one of the challenges will be integration, and I didn't really dive into those details to sort of understand that, but it doesn't come without its challenges. And you and I have talked about, recently Rakuten and Tarek's departure, and how, Symphony and Rakuten have had, challenges, kind of keeping that business stable and, more importantly, growing that business. So I don't know if you caught the news, but what do you think?
I did. I did catch the news. I thought it was a pretty big win.
Yeah.
Um, are they using Samsung for this, or was that a
They
different?
are. So I'm glad you asked. So Samsung and Intel, obviously, from a compute standpoint, Dell Technologies, Capgemini, and Wind River. So it's a number of different companies that are coming together. I expect Capgemini will probably, focus on the integration of all of this. So
Yeah, the reason why I saw this announcement was because Samsung was attached to it, and I thought
right.
that was a pretty big deal for Samsung Open RAN in general. So I think
Yeah.
it's a big deal. I definitely think this might be one of the biggest real wins for Open RAN from a tier one carrier globally.
Yeah. No, I agree. And it sort of proves that Open RAN can play in both greenfield and brownfield network deployments. So yeah, it'll be interesting to keep our eyes on this and report back as things develop. Let's move to your first topic, and you want to talk about Fairphone 5. What is that all about?
So if you're not familiar, Fairphone is kind of like the ethical smartphone brand. Um, I put air quotes just because ethical is very subjective.
Sure.
Um, but as far as ethics go, they're all about like having you use your phone for as long as you can. They have a 5-year warranty on the Fairphone 5, for example, and they have 10 years of software updates. So you literally can use the phone as long as you want, and you can hand it down to somebody and they can continue to use it.
Huh.
Um, this new Fairphone 5 has a 5G modem in it. They're actually able to do that because they found a Qualcomm IoT chipset, which IoT chipsets, as you know, have longer support cycles for software and updates and firmware.
Yeah.
So what they're able to do is take this chipset that's for IoT and use it in a phone. And I think it's actually a brilliant idea because it gets them to 10 years of software updates.
Mhm.
Um, I think here they're saying it will get OS software and security updates for 8 years, which is still
Okay.
really good.
Yeah.
And then also it's repairable, so you can like actually take out the camera modules, you can take out the battery, you can swap things out and upgrade things. Um, and that's really a big deal of this. And then also on top of that, 70% they say it's more than 70% fair focus materials,
Okay.
which means that they're using like recycled or really transparent supply chain. They also say that they're like paying people a global living wage of $2.63 with bonuses. So they're actually trying to uh, really focus on sustainability and you know paying attention to people's concerns around the smartphone industry.
Yeah.
And they're growing as a company. I see them improving their marketing and more people using their phones. Honestly, if I hear people talk about, living conditions and blah 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 about smartphone factories and things like that, if you really really truly care, this is the brand that really addresses those concerns, because they also manufacture all of their phones in 100 using 100% renewable energy. So
Huh.
they really put a lot of thought into how they do this.
Yeah.
It's a dual SIM phone. It has, wide angle camera and a pretty high end 50 megapixel main camera. So you can actually get good photos out of this thing, and you can really use it like a intentional smartphone. Um, and yeah, it's, the processor in it is very similar to Snapdragon 778G. So it's not like it's a really old processor, but it's also
Yeah.
maybe not necessarily a flagship phone either. But
Right.
it has an OLED screen, Android 13. It's really an impressive phone, 6.45-inch screen, 90 hertz refresh rate, Corning Gorilla Glass 5. It's got a front-facing camera. Yeah, shoots 4K video. So it's pretty much everything you would expect. It also has a micro SD slot that supports up to 2 terabytes. So all of this comes for about a 700 euro price. Has, Wi-Fi. I don't think they claim which. I think it does have Wi-Fi 6. And the battery is a 4,200 milliamp hour battery that you can swap out, which is the part of the replaceable part that makes it last longer. Nothing on water resistance, but it says it's IP55, and it's 810H, and what else? Has NFC, which a
Yeah.
lot of phones that don't, think about these things. And it
Hmm.
does fast charging with a 30-watt charger. So
Wow.
honestly, I think this is a great phone for people who are
Yeah.
really conscious about the environment, and um, I think it's better than, iPhone for that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the company or the devices. I mean, you're our device guru, but and certainly Apple and Samsung and OnePlus and these other vendors. I mean, they're using recyclable material, in their devices. But it really sounds to me that Fairphone is taking it to the next level. I like the removable battery. I like the memory card so that you can extend the life, right, out of this device. And truly with those types of features, you can get a lot more, out of it longer term, right? I mean, one of the issues that I'm constantly faced with is just running out of storage on my iPhone. I'm an iPhone user. And then you have to upgrade, to
Get
get,
a two
larger
terabyte
capacity.
SD card for like $20.
Yeah, I know it's crazy. So I love it. So yeah, I learned something new today because I wasn't familiar with the company. But let's go to my second topic, and I want to talk about Nokia. And pardon me, I mean, I'm dying from allergies this week. It's been it's been pretty bad. But I want to talk about Nokia, and they're launching a drone network solution to complement its private 5G offering. And I think this is really innovative on Nokia's part. They certainly have been a leader, and very they're likely the earliest entrant into offering private 5G. And so I think this helps continue their momentum there. And so what this is all about, it's an industrial drone solution, and you'll get a kick out of this. So it's not a manufacturer that you'd be familiar with. I mean, it's Nokia, so Nokia is going to build these themselves, and it's called Nokia Drone Networks, and it's designed to run beyond line of sight off of private networks. And if you think about it, there are a lot of industrial use cases for this. Inspection, in multiple different industries. I could see applicability in ports, which tend to be a poster child use case for 5G deployment. And so I like it. This gives Nokia a little bit of differentiation. Certainly there are other drone solutions out there that leverage, next generation 5G networks, but I think it's pretty cool. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen something similar um, from companies like Verizon. They acquired like a drone network solution
Right.
company that kind of did services, and they wanted to kind of layer that on top. But I haven't really heard much from them about it. So I wonder um, how much business there really is for this today.
Yeah.
But I do agree that with a properly deployed private 5G network, you could really see some really interesting use cases like drones. And I think drones are becoming a more um, possible application with the right type of 5G deployment, which
Mhm.
kind of leads me into my topic.
Yeah, that's a great segue. So, and I'll have some things to say about this one as well. But you want to talk about NATO testing 5G in Latvia with virtual reality and drones.
Yeah, so this news kind of um, percolated through the news cycle quite a bit. Basically, NATO is using Latvia as like a test ground for its tactical 5G bubble. And basically, they want to use virtual reality, unmanned vehicles, um, augmented reality, and drones to kind of uh, give the 5G network a good test for real applications. Um,
Mhm.
and a lot of these Baltic states are where NATO is doing a lot of its early testing. First of
Mhm.
all, because they want to see how it works close to Russia.
Right.
But also these are countries that are more willing to take these kinds of tests and have more modern networks. Um, and it's not just about Russia; it's also about China. And it's just kind of like evaluating how these technologies work better on 5G
Mhm.
versus how they worked on 4G and whether or not they're actually, ready for prime time.
Yeah. You know, the military, we've talked about military applications with 5G and drones, would play a big part of that. I'm very familiar with Latvia. I've been traveling there for the last several years for an event called 5G Techratory, and I'll be attending again in October and likely sharing some of my insights in October after I return. But there are three mobile network operators in Latvia, and I've spent a lot of time with LMT, Latvia Mobile Telephone, and they have been focused on drone applications for the last 2 or 3 years. So I think you'll hear more about this, and actually, I should learn more while I'm at 5G Techratory in October. But I think this is this is a fantastic sort of demonstration or use case, and kind of demonstrates the power that 5G could bring to military applications. And to your point, for our viewers and listeners that are not familiar with the Northern European geography, I mean, the Baltics border Russia, right? So the Baltic states are Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania. And so, yeah, I think it's and given the geopolitical environment and and some of these countries and others joining NATO finally, given the Russian threat, it'll be interesting to see this play out. But let's move to my third and final topic, and I want to talk about Mavenir. And I've been a little critical of the company. I think rightly so. There have been a lot of missteps. There was an IPO that was pulled. There have been these several large reductions in staffing based on maybe the company being a little too aggressive with its growth prospects and that sort of thing. So actually, our friend Mike Dano at Light Reading penned an article this week, and he's sort of talking about how Mavenir. His headline was Mavenir's mobile core business hits the skids. And what he's meaning by that is that if you look back at 2020, Mavenir was considered a top 5 supplier, and you've got companies like Cisco that provide a converged mobile core. Now you have HPE with its acquisition of Athonet. That'll be out there front and center, and certainly Nokia and Ericsson and even Huawei. And so basically what's happened is Mavenir has dropped out of the top 5, although Mike talks about how their CEO is somewhat defensive of that, and is stating that they still believe that they're in the top 5, but regardless of all of that, they've lost share, and it makes me wonder: is what they're experiencing in other parts of their business with private and kind of RAN and orchestration, are those missteps now filtering down into mobile core, and are mobile network operators and even enterprises that want to deploy these solutions, are they losing faith in Mavenir based on their financial health? And I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to figure that one out. I think that is the case. And Mavenir is going to really have to do something pretty dramatic to pull this ship around. So I don't know if you caught the news or not, but any thoughts before we move to your third and final?
I did not catch the news, but I do have some thoughts.
Yeah,
It feels like they're kind of in a downward spiral, um, which is not a good thing.
yeah,
Um, I also think denying that you're in a downward spiral doesn't really fix the problem.
right.
So I think to your point, they have to do something drastic.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't really know what's going on there, but um, I've definitely seen their presence and prominence start to wane in the last
Hmm.
couple years. Um, and it'll be interesting to see what they do to try and turn that around. Because I think the area that they play in is not necessarily, um, you know, been the best market to be in the last couple years.
Yeah.
But I also think things are improving. Um, and there's a chance that they're just not taking advantage of those, moves.
Yeah. From my perspective, and then, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but it's execution. And I mean, they've got a strong portfolio. I mean, I've spent time with the company in, years prior. And so it's not strength of portfolio. I think it's execution. And, you know, I think you were alluding to this, and I'll just state the obvious. Um, Core is where it's at, right? As we move from non-standalone to standalone 5G deployments, and RAN, which has traditionally been one of their stronger suits and portfolio pieces, that's on the downslope because these mobile network operators have pretty much fully deployed their RAN infrastructure, and now they're going to start deploying 5G core. And the fact that they're not participating to the degree that they were 2 or 3 years ago, I mean, the timing is just, I mean, it's the worst timing. It's the flip of what it should be for them. But with that said, let's move to your third and final, and you want to talk about IFA this year. And I've never been. Have you been?
I have been to IFA. It's it's usually this time of year, like the first week of September or last week of
Yeah,
August. Um, and I've gone once. It's a very cool show. You'll see lots of interesting things that you've never probably ever seen.
yeah,
Lots of appliances, I will say.
right,
But there's also lots of other consumer technology like phones. And there were
right,
a ton of phone announcements like there usually are. Usually what happens is smartphone OEMs will announce devices for China earlier in the year. And if they don't find time, they eventually end up launching their global version there at IFA. Huawei used to do lots of phone launches there, and so did Honor. And unsurprisingly, they did again this year. So Huawei Mate 60 Pro launched this week. I don't think they had an official launch at IFA, but they launched it during the week of IFA, so I don't think that's a mistake. Um,
right.
and it supposedly is going to have a 5G modem, um, and it's also going to have a um, satellite capability, which is something that they've been talking about for a while. But they won't actually officially confirm either of those things, and part of that is because the understanding is that they are manufacturing these chips themselves in secret factories that they've been supplying under shell companies inside of China with the help of the Chinese government to the tune of 20 to 30 billion dollars.
That
So
sounds pretty
there's a
nefarious,
whole
man.
whole crazy semiconductor story behind that.
Oh gosh.
The other crazy semiconductor story behind that is I was in Malaysia last week and I held a Mate 60 Pro and I didn't
Yeah.
realize that it hadn't even launched yet. So
Um,
color me surprised. I wish I had gone in and figured out what SoC was in there. Different story. I was not feeling well. Um,
yeah.
but nonetheless, interesting thing. On top of that, Honor, which used to be part of Huawei, is now its
Yeah.
own company, kind of. Um, Launched the Magic V2 globally, which it only originally had launched in China. It's the thinnest foldable that's out there today. Um, and that's kind of their claim to fame. And then they also launched a purse prototype, which looks a lot like a Mate 30 Pro or Mate X 2, which is a Huawei phone. So I don't know what's going on there, but it looks very similar if you look that up. It's like a concept that you can kind of like wear it like a purse. I don't really know. But
Yeah.
on top of that,
Interesting.
Techno announced or kind of showed a rollable phone concept. Techno is kind of like a budget phone brand in Africa. Um, and they have a lot of interesting phones that they try to do something different with. And it looks like they're kind of taking the TCL um, banner and trying to create like really interesting budget phones that still have a lot of cool features.
Yeah.
Um, and they have like, one of the most affordable foldables that are out there. And then Sony Xperia launched their Xperia 5 Mark 5. Just, same phone kind of series. They updated the specs like they usually do. Better cameras as per usual. Nothing really that exciting there, but it's a new phone. And that's kind of the roundup from IFA 2023. Nothing really surprising other than, what might be going on with the Mate 60 Pro. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I definitely haven't been to IFA in a few years. Haven't been since the pandemic, but
Yeah.
it's a very European focused show, and uh,
Mhm.
that's really where a lot of these OEMs are trying to launch these phones.
Well, I'm surprised that Sony is still making that phone, right? I remember that phone being around years ago, and like it doesn't really, I mean, it doesn't have a lot of volume behind it, does it?
No, they don't have a lot of volume, but they're able to price them and spec them for the type of consumer that they know will buy them.
Yeah.
So they are producing them in low volume, but charging a price that is profitable.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. And I wonder if that Huawei Mate 60 Pro fell off a truck along with some fake Louis Vuitton bags and some fake Rolexes when you were in Malaysia, because I know it's been many years
I
since
was
I've
in
been there.
an official Huawei phone store. I wasn't like
Oh,
in
really?
a third party brand. Like in Asia, when you travel, a lot of brands have their own stores. So like I went to an
Yeah.
Oppo store, I went to a Vivo store, the Huawei, DJI, Xiaomi. For me, I haven't been to China in like, 4 years now.
Right.
Malaysia has a lot of close connections with China. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um, it was really cool for me to actually go into a Western mall. It was very Western in style with lots of
Yeah.
Western brands, but then also all the cool Chinese smartphone brands. So I had a
Yeah.
good time, and I kind of poked around and looked at the price of things and decided if the discount was worth it. And I
Hmm.
was a little too tightly packed, so there wasn't much for me to buy.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, Kuala Lumpur is a beautiful, beautiful place. It feels like you're Indiana Jones when you fly into that airport, and it's just a canopy of trees. And it's probably been 15 years since I've been, so I was a little envious when you told me you were heading over there. But really cool, man. Hey, it's another great podcast. I'm excited for this week, and I don't know what you're doing, but I'm wearing my UT Longhorn baseball cap because it's our home opener against Rice. So hook 'em horns. What are you doing?
Um, a lot of nothing. Uh,
Okay, well that's
Mostly
good.
because
You're
I've been
recovering.
traveling like crazy for the last month. Uh,
Yeah, that
Probably gonna
sounds
be
good.
benchmarking all the new GPUs I just got, and playing Starfield, which just came out yesterday. Well, early released yesterday, but comes out next week. Um, and yeah, just spending time with my wife and dog. Um,
Cool.
Padres are awful this year, so I'll probably go to the game on Monday, but that's kind of the extent of what I'll do. They got brutally murdered yesterday, so
Uh,
um,
yeah.
yeah, I went home and had some drinks downstairs at the bar. So that
Well,
was the
buddy,
extent of my baseball adventures yesterday.
yeah, man. I mean, when my two daughters were younger, and I lived in Houston when I worked for Compaq. We'd go to a lot of Astros games, and the best product there was the cotton candy and the popcorn, and not the play. So I feel your pain, and I hope the Padres they find a way to kind of pull it around, because man, they had a great season last season.
Not,
So
I don't think it's happening this season.
yeah, and the Astros are hanging in there. I mean, the AL West is tight, right? We got three teams neck and neck. The Rangers and another team that I will not mention. But well, hey, buddy, it was another great podcast. Why don't you take us home?
Absolutely. We hope our viewers and listeners found this week's topics interesting. If anyone out there provides insights on a specific 5G topic for a future podcast, please reach out to us on social media. Will is at Willtown Tech, and I'm at Anshel Sog. We hope you have a great weekend, and please tune in again next week. And don't forget to rate and subscribe.